Howzit Bru? What a phenomenal, stunning, thrilling game between the All Blacks and France in Paris yesterday. And I must admit, from a neutral's perspective, what a absolute fantastic game of rugby to watch. And I didn't know who was going to win until that last minute. By the way, welcome. My name's Kenneth, and this is Rugby Bru. I'd love you to subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content, and love you to leave your thoughts and comments below the video too. Always encourage dialogue and good comments and feedback and positive banter in the community. So let's dive in. New Zealand loses one by 1 point. I'm glad I didn't do a preview video because this would have been three predictions in a row that I got wrong. The first two, I thought England and Ireland would beat New Zealand. I was wrong. This game, I thought New Zealand would beat France, and I thought New Zealand would do it pretty comfortably by more than 7 points, actually. But I got it wrong. And you have to say, okay, how the heck if you look at the stats, if you look at even just watching the game as an observer, is how did New Zealand actually lose that game? Because there you're sitting, or if you there being New Zealand fan, you're sitting there with 61% territory. You're sitting there with 55% of the possession. Sorry, 61% of the possession, 55% of the territory. You've covered almost twice as many meters. Let me just pull up my stats here. Is 651 meters versus 370, 34 defenders beaten versus 12. Okay, so that's 3 times as many defenders. 8 clean breaks versus 4, double the amount of clean breaks. Gain line carries 110 versus 66. Passes 240 versus 91. Offloads 13 versus 4. Turnovers 4 versus 6. So that's the 1 point that you came off second best against France, apart from kicks from hand. We actually know that France kick a lot more than other teams. You only kick 16 times, they kick 23. We didn't see as much kicking from the All Blacks as they have under Razor in this game. And you won double the amount of rucks, 136 versus 68. So how come with all that possession, how come with all that territory, how come with 3 times the number of defenders beaten, double the meters, in terms of passes, 240 versus 91, and almost double the amount of gain line carries? How do you lose that game? Because New Zealand didn't play bad, did they? They looked pretty damn impressive. And there's once I was watching that game, and I was sitting there. This was still in the first half, and it was close to half time. And you guys were really turning up the dial there. You guys being All Blacks, of course, and very, very impressive. You were getting over the advantage line, lots of creativity, creating gaps. Cam Roy just scored the second try, and I thought, heck, New Zealand are really going to be the force and maybe even the team to beat next year. And and so I was really surprised in terms of how you actually lost that, right? So from a neutral, it was fantastic, stress free. I could really enjoy it. But there's a couple of things here that we got to unpack. I would say this, right? You don't want to overanalyze losses like this because it is a 1 point loss against a very, very good French team. They've only lost once in 12 games at home, I believe, or Stade de France. And they lost to us, the Springboks, in the quarterfinal of the World Cup, as we know, by 1 point. This was a razor thin margin. So you have to ask yourself, all right, am I over analyzing, or is this just a game that we lost because one or two chances could have gone either way, bounce of a ball, this little opportunity, drop pass, whatever? And that's the fine margins of international rugby, right? So for me, if I look at this loss with all the stats, and we'll jump into a couple of things, is you have to look at the All Blacks at the World Cup versus now. So in the final, have they improved? And I actually don't know the answer to that question, right? Where we can see, for example, I did a video earlier about Australia. Australia certainly have jumped, significantly. I'd say South Africa have improved. I think Ireland have dropped off. I think England have dropped off a little bit. Actually, England in certain areas they've progressed, um, but then in certain areas they're going backwards. But I'll still say England is on an upward trend. So in terms of New Zealand, from the World Cup final to today, have they really improved? And I actually don't know because the records are around about the same right now. But there's certain things that you're doing really well. And then you've got to ask yourself at the beginning of the year, okay, so that World Cup was under Fozzie. This is this year under Razor, new coaching staff for the most part, bringing in his team, his ideas coming across with new players, etc. Have they improved? And I would say yes. So there's, it's quite weird with coaches, right? Because just from a South African's experience is, and you also see this in England and other teams for the most part, when a new coach comes in, there's typically a lift, that happens. For us, South Africa, we saw it pretty immediately because we had 2 rounds of poor coaches with Hanneke Meyer and old I've Alistair Coetzee drawing a blank there, right? So the impact was immediate, but that first season of Rassie in charge, we only had a 50% win ratio, right? So not very good. And like I said in previous videos, if when we went to New Zealand, if we had lost that game, he was going to resign. Thank God that didn't happen, huh? So so you've got to balance this all out a little bit. So New Zealand, I don't think had that lift from the beginning, right? You had those games at home, yeah, you won them against England, and that was great, but it wasn't like this huge, like, boom, hey, we've got a new coach, completely new ideas. I think Razor's coming in with completely different ideas from where you were under Fozzie, and that's taking a little bit of an adjustment. And so in the beginning of the season, we saw a lot of confusion, wrong selection of players, bench used horribly, etc., is all of a sudden, you're seeing more consistency, you're seeing everything come together. And just like the Wallabies today, you started seeing Joe Schmidt, or yesterday, was it? It was today. Man, I watched so much rugby this weekend. My wife hates me right now. I'm just kidding. Close to. Um, but yeah, it's you can see this. You can see everything that Joe Schmidt's doing with the Wallabies kicking in, and I think you can start seeing that with the All Blacks, right? But with that being said, is I don't think you need to overanalyze that uh, these losses all the time. However, having said that, there's 2 key things in this game that stood out for me. Number one was the gain line success. The gain line success, although when you watch it, it's quite interesting how you subjectively interpret a game versus what the data actually tells you. And so the thing for France is what they're really good at, right? Is they have those it's a power play. It reminds me a little bit of the Springbok forwards, right? It's very, very big forwards. In fact, I would say they're probably the biggest pack around in world rugby. Very, very physical, and they carry that ball strong. So their gain line success rate. So it's not just gain line carries where you guys had 110 and they had 66. Out of those 66, they had a 63% gain line success, where the All Blacks were like 51 or 52%. So France were more effective at that, right? So when they had the opportunities, despite them only having 39% possession and 45% territory, and that's unusual in the territory because they kick for territory, right? So it's not unusual with the possession with France because they actually don't always want to hold the ball, right? So that's one of the reasons why, Rassie came up with the idea in the quarterfinal is we had played France the year before and we only had 1 scrum. And so we couldn't implement our set piece and that domination, have that platform from there. But also that he noticed that the French were kicking the ball and the forwards were staying back, so they didn't have to work, and then they let the opposition run at you, and that's why that Damien Willems called that scrum from a mark, right? Which then gave us the penalty to the line out, which allowed us to control and have our platform for our attack, play the game that we wanted to play, right? So scrum to win the penalty, and then the line out to control our attack and get their forwards working so we could scrum them more and tire them out so they're less effective in loose play. So the thing for them, right, is that gain line success was very, very important. So even though they didn't have that possession, they were being more effective with their carries. The other thing is that they outdid you at the breakdown. They had more turnovers than the All Blacks. And that was the telling thing. And so for me, just in the second half, there were 3 instances where the All Blacks were within 5 to 10 meters and had worked their way up beautifully, also with your own power plays. And I thought you guys had the most effective game of the year, of the entire season under Razor. But it's a different style of play in terms of there's a lot of offloads and a lot of pop passes with one-off runners breaking through and creating space, right? So even Tamati Williams making a superb break, trying to do a goose step, but left isolated, which leads to the turnover, right? And of course, there's going to be players that break through, but you know, the New Zealand of old, right? And I'm saying this from a outside perspective, from being a Springbok supporter that watching New Zealand play us and play other teams. The signature of those old All Blacks teams was a support play. It was relentless. There was always 3 or 4 options there. So when they were going to score a try, there was like one Springbok defender, one English defender, one French defender, and there's 4 or 5 New Zealanders that could have scored that try. So the characteristics of the old New Zealand teams, or the New Zealand teams of the past, was creativity, was individual brilliance, was accuracy, was ruthlessness. When you got to those certain areas, they were scoring. And there was this incredible resilience and belief. So I'll come to that in a second, or why I'm saying those things. Is in that second half, there was 3 instances, right, where you had broken out and you were right there, 5 meters, 10 meters max from scoring under those posts, and it was just a pass that went astray into a French hand, or was a turnover, or it was knocked on, and that whole thing changed. And the same thing for France too. They also made mistakes, but it was the team who capitalized the most, whereas in the past, those All Black teams capitalized on the smallest error. And you could see that from the French winger. I don't even know how to say his name, Bailly, whatever. He's phenomenal. The dude with the red scrum cap. Super quick. I mean, Sever Reese looked like he was going backwards. Anton Leonard-Brown, looked like he was going backwards, and he outpaced Sever Reese, and you don't see that very often, right? So, and that's how he scored that try. But they capitalized on any mistakes. So I'd say they took their chances really well, and I think they were just slightly better than you at the breakdown, and much more effective than you at the gain line success, which allowed them to get that momentum, right? And they could have those powerful ball runners keep on coming, and then for their backs to score, or whoever to score. So the thing too is, I would say, if you're going to be critical of the All Blacks team, is maybe its inability to capitalize on those finishes where they were in that right place. And I see people saying Scott Barrett shouldn't have gone for the 3 points. He should have gone for the touch. Hindsight's a beautiful thing, right? It's 2020 vision. But I think for him, the French defense was freaking high level, right? Very, very effective, very good defense. Hard to break down with Sean Edwards being there. And the captain has the feel and momentum. And I watched that game. I watched it twice. In fact, I've watched it 2.5 times now. And so he probably felt the momentum. He's like, I don't know if we can pull this off here with the scrum. We've come close quite often this second half and haven't been able to close. Let's take the 3 points, and maybe that opportunity will come for us again. And he didn't waste any time in making that decision, right? It wasn't like, so to me, he had that, I can feel the energy here. I can feel the momentum. And for us, the best thing is the 3 points. So I also think, again, that Razor made a mistake by taking off Cam Roygaard, although I'm not looking at the data, right? So just my opinion. I don't know why you'd want to take off a player of that quality who was superb. He hasn't played a lot of rugby this year, and he is a real gem, right? Just add to the line of incredible scrum halves, Aaron Smith, Justin Marshall, etc. Right, that guy is special, and he's just got a real tenacity about him. And again, old Cortez, I think he made a couple of errors, and you could see that drop off. So where South Africa has been fortunate um, is we've been able to this year make lots of changes, on average 10 changes per game, and still find a way to win, even though we're not playing well. Is one of the big factors in that is our bench comes on, and our bench allows us to go up another half notch or another full notch or another 2 or 3 gears. Well, I don't feel New Zealand is being able to do that. So the second thing, so the inability to finish, which goes to that old ruthlessness that I spoke about, and accuracy, is the other one that I talk about is the creativity and individual brilliance. Is the attack structure and variation of the All Blacks doesn't seem as effective as in the past. And as well as Geordie Barrett played, and obviously he went off earlier with a concussion, and Anton Leonard-Brown came, and Rico Ioane, I don't know if they truly, let's be honest, they're not unlocking defenses and making huge clean breaks. You got these pop passes, offloads, one-off runners coming the whole time. And you just have to think back to the days of going back to the professional era, or start a professional era, 95 World Cup. Let's go all the way back there. Josh Kronfeld, Fitzy, hookers, loose forwards in the outside channels, there with the wingers, support. If John Olomu wasn't scoring a try and he got tackled in the last minute, he popping to Kronfeld. And then coming back even to recent times, Richie McCaw, Reed, always on the freaking outside channel. And I say that friggin' because those guys caused us so much heartbreak. And it was just like this relentlessness where there was so much creativity, sucking in defense, but they had individual brilliance, and they had incredible. Did their set pieces really well, and you guys' set pieces were fantastic this weekend. But that creativity and of the back line, and not knowing what the heck is coming, and just this relentless. The offloads were still there, the pop passes were still there, but it was this variation that was keep happening, and I think that's what's lacking. And finally, the other thing that the Peter Lakai had a stormer today. So if you think about some of these players like Geordie and Rico Ioane, the one thing about Razor is that he's definitely kept a good balance of experienced heads and younger guys. But if we look at this honestly, is a lot of these opportunities for these young guys have come through injuries. So Wallace Satiti was not there as a selection, but came through because of injury. Now, that can happen, but then you see like Peter Lakai, you think, hey, where the heck has this guy been? Right? So why have you been playing around with Luke Jacobson? You've got Ethan Blackadder, of course, and Dalton Papali. But why haven't you been giving these guys more chances over this year to see what your structures are and what these guys are capable? And I would love to see some variation between Geordie Barrett, Anton Leonard-Brown, and Rico Ioane. Who knows? Proctor. There is probably going to be some youngsters there that are just absolutely itching to be let loose, and give them a go. Because, I think you would, as a new coach, is you forgiven, hey, I'm going to be trying some of these new guys, we're getting on. You have a lot more forgiveness. Now, as you go into the second season, you go try bleed some more of these youngsters, it's going to become difficult, because now you go through this season, you've been selecting this one team, and you 4 losses. I think you'll finish 4, right? You're going to Italy. I think you'll smash them next week. But you don't want those guys just playing, Fiji and, Italy or Japan. You want them coming up against these best guys away from home. And even if it's only 10, 15 minutes, but put them there on the bench, that to give you some variation and keep the opposition guessing. But this is probably nitpicky now, but it's almost like a summary of the All Black season, because you've got over your main hurdles, but a very successful end of year tour for sure. But so that also points to the fact that New Zealand have made progress under Razor this year, but there's just still a couple of things that you start thinking leaves you with a little bit more questions still, on unanswered questions. But I think all teams, right? South Africa's in this sort of stage now. We're winning games, but we got this experience. But we really haven't really been playing well at this end of year tour. Um, we had a phenomenal rugby championships, and there's a lot of changes and lack of momentum. Ireland's a bit up and down. England's over here. Australia's on the up. Argentina's on the up. And Wales on their way down. Scotland, I don't know, they're pretty flat. So this is a year of experimentation. So I think New Zealand's on the right track. We think, but there's still some of those unanswered questions. I would say that nagging in the back of the head. But phenomenal game. And I forgot to say, man, completely forgot. How magnificent was that haka at the beginning, and the lighting and everything? That was incredible. And it just looked absolutely amazing. So well done to both teams. It was a fantastic test match to watch. And maybe it's just one of those games. Hey, France were just better than us on that day in terms of taking us the chance. I thought you guys were equal, but they just took the one or two chances that came their way. Whereas you guys had the chances, you could have won, but maybe not today. So that's 3 losses now to France on the trot, to go along with your other 4 losses against South Africa on the trot. So there's things for you to look up to. I think, you got 2 games against South Africa at home next year. And unfortunately, France are going to be sending a development team to New Zealand next season, which is pretty sad, actually. But anyway, it is what it is. If you enjoyed this video, I appreciate it. And love you to subscribe, leave your thoughts and comments. I'd love for you guys to let me know what you thought of the game. What do you think of the selections, the players, etc.? And so many fantastic performances by the All Blacks. I mean, just rattling off quickly: Lomax, Tamati Williams, Ardie Surveyor, absolute a legend. Cam Roygaard, Peter Lakai, Wallace TT. You name them. I thought Will Jordan, Caleb Clark was excellent in my opinion. Severis maybe a little bit quiet and not existent. I would have loved to have seen Will Jordan come in a lot more. I mean, he tried his best, but just maybe that lack of creativity with Geordie Barrett and Rico Ioane, as long as Geordie was on there. But other than that, thank you for a fantastic game. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate everybody. Have a beautiful weekend. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Cheers.